Support for this episode comes from Dexcom. When I think about our family's use of CGM and Dexcom, it's getting harder and harder to remember how we did things before. I mean, how did we manage when Benny needed something like 10 finger sticks a day when he was a toddler? We thought it was amazing to switch to Dexcom CGM when it needed to be calibrated twice a day. Remember that? Now, Dexcom G6 eliminates finger sticks for calibration and diabetes treatment decisions. We love the alerts and alarms, and that we can change them both for him and for us. A lot has changed as Benny has grown from a toddler with type 1 to a college student. Dexcom Share and Follow has let us help give him more and more independence. If your glucose alerts and readings from the G6 do not match symptoms or expectations, use a blood glucose meter to make diabetes treatment decisions. Learn more, go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, what growing up with diabetes can mean for career choices, financial decisions, and family relationships. Madison Carter is a local news anchor who makes T1D very visible, and she does not hold back in talking about it. She's generous with incredible insight into how she was raised, sacrifices her family made, why she is staunchly independent, but knows her mom is still there for her when she needs her, and what her parents have to say about all that now. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome to another week of the show. I'm your host, Stacey Sims. Always so glad to have you here. You know we aim to educate and inspire about diabetes with a focus on people who use insulin. And as we get ready to open registration for the next Mom's Night Out events in Denver and Philadelphia this fall, I thought it's a good time to let you hear more of what goes on at these events. These are, of course, for moms of kids with diabetes, but I like to have at least one speaker who lives with type 1. It's an important perspective that I think needs to be at every diabetes event. So you're going to hear me in a moment introduce Madison Carter and give more of her bio and who she is. But I think it's important that you also know she lost her sister to type 1 diabetes, and she is going to talk about that. She does not talk about what happened or why, and that's none of our business, so I didn't ask. But I know some of you may not want to listen because of that, and I didn't want to take you by surprise. I do hope you listen because Madison is a wonderful speaker with an incredible message about family strength and how we can balance teaching and encouraging independence in our kids with T1D while also letting them know we are always there for them, even as adults. Okay, one more thing. Pretty far into this, I don't know, maybe half an hour in, somebody brings Madison a mimosa. And obviously you can't see that and we don't mention it, but that's what all the laughter is about. And Madison saying thank you, just so you know. This was recorded in January on the second day of Mom's Night Out Charlotte. Madison was our closing keynote speaker. When I talk about getting speakers, it's a balance because I want to hear from moms like us to share our experience, like Sarah last night. But as we also mentioned last night, we also really need to hear from people with type 1. It's so important for us to hear from, I kind of think of like a time machine. When Benny was very little, I couldn't meet enough adults with type 1. And I was like, he's going to be okay. What did your mom do, right? Like, what happened? It's like looking into a time machine in a way. And I think it's just great to have that kind of contact. So many of you know or have heard from today's closing keynote speaker because she has spoken at Type 1 Nation summits. And she was at Children's Congress last summer. Jenny Costner was her helper, your shadow, and so that was wonderful. She's also an anchor and investigative reporter at WSOC TV, so you see her on TV, and she's also been super open about diabetes in that role, which is so fabulous to see because she's educating people who have no idea. So Madison Carter is here. She was named I'm sorry to look at my phone, but I want to get her accolades right. She was named News Personality of the Year during her time in Buffalo, New York, and is the youngest executive officer to sit on the board of the National Association of Black Journalists. She lives with type 1. She's dedicated to improving access and affordability of medical supplies. I'm thrilled to have her here today. Please welcome Madison Carter.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And I just need to start off by acknowledging my outfit. My mother would be mortified. She was like, "What are you wearing?" I was like, "Something super appropriate, like down to my ankles and my boobs aren't out." And but I had nowhere else to wear this dress, so I wanted some moms to see me. Thank you. I just wanted to get dressed up, and I can't wear this to work because, as you heard, I am a news anchor. So thank you for just seeing my outfit. I love mom support. As Stacey said, my name's Madison Carter. I moved to Charlotte about a year ago. I have been all over, grew up outside of Washington, D.C. I left home when I was 17 to go to college. I went to Syracuse, and then I came back, tried to move closer to my mom, because I was like, ooh, that was hard. I was only in college for about 2.5 years because I got super excited, and I accidentally graduated early. So now I'm 19, trying to pay bills as a journalist, and it just was not working out great. So I tried to move closer to home, and then my mom left me and went down to Florida. So I was in Charlottesville alone. I went back to New York. I was in Buffalo, as you heard. Then I went to Atlanta. And I'll talk about this a little bit later, but Atlanta was super hard for me. And my mom ended up getting an apartment a mile away from me because I was, at that point, 25. I looked like I was up here career-wise, life-wise, but I could not keep it together anymore. And I was like, "Mom, can you please come?" And as you all know, your baby says that, and there she was. So my mom came to Atlanta with me for a year, and then I came to Charlotte because my younger sister was here. But we're here to talk about diabetes. That was just a little bit of my background. I've been all over. And I want to say my very first memory, I was diagnosed at 3. No one in the family had ever been diagnosed with type 1. Now, there was a lot of type 2. And I'm looking at my mom and dad, and I was like, now, why would you reproduce knowing that there's all this type 2? Like, you're making it really hard for us. But no type 1 that we knew about. And so, the whole story, I was super skinny. I am not a skinny lady. And so that was the first sign I was 3. But my mom said she could count all my ribs. I was falling asleep, on the toilet. Fell asleep in my eggs one morning, had no idea what was going on. My mom tells a story that the doctor kept saying it's the flu. It's the flu. And one day she was putting me to bed. She said she could count every single one of my ribs. And she was like, something's wrong. So she put me in the car. She gave me a can of Sprite on the way to the doctor's office. And when we got to the hospital, they tested my blood sugar. It was somewhere in the 2000s. Yes, a Sprite might not have been a good idea, but somewhere in the 2000s, the doctors were so freaked out that I was alive that they said, "We will not touch her," and they made Children's Hospital come get me from their facility. And so that's how I was diagnosed. So that was right before my 3rd birthday. My mom always talks about how the first thing that was going through her mind when we were in the hospital was, will she be able to have cake on her 4th birthday? And she just was so upset. And growing up and understanding it a little bit more, I can see why that was so upsetting for her. But my first memory, those were my mom's memories that she told me. My first memory with type 1 diabetes was when I was 5. So I was diagnosed right before I turned 4. When I was 5 is the last time anyone has ever touched me with a needle. And this is my own memory, and I just remember so vividly. There was one time that my mom, this was before shots. Of course, my mom's, you all know, I'm sure you talked about the fight, the insurance. We're not giving her pump. She's 5, all the things. So I'm still on, doing MDI. And I remember one time my mom gave me a shot and it hurt. And I saw in her face how that made her feel, that she was hurting me. And so I made a decision. This is 5-year-old Madison. This tells you who I am. I made a decision in that moment. I was like, sometimes this is going to hurt, but I don't want it to hurt my mom. So that was the last time anybody ever touched me with a needle. And sometimes it hurts, and sometimes I don't like it, but it's me to me, I don't think I ever told my mom that because I didn't want her to have to carry that. But yeah, even when I went to go get the flu shot, I was like, absolutely not. I'll do it myself. The doctor wouldn't let me. But that was my first real memory with diabetes. And it has impacted every single part of my life. I don't remember a life without diabetes. This is the only version of myself I know. So I have that benefit. When my sister was diagnosed, she was 7. So she had lived a different kind of life. She was allowed to eat cereal. I was not. So it was just very, very different. It wasn't until I moved out to go to college that I realized people in my family like candy and cereal. And when I came home from college, I was like, Renee, what is this in the cabinet? Like, I had never seen some of these food items in my house before. And it was at that moment I realized that the whole family has type 1 diabetes, right? In some way. The whole family makes adjustments. The whole family helps. And I want to acknowledge that in this room because I know there's been conversations about how, oh, we're not type 1, but you are sometimes. Like you can be, you make these adjustments. When I was thinking about what I wanted to say to a room full of moms today, I was breaking up with my boyfriend of the week, and I was talking to my friend about, I was like, yeah, and he said I'm controlling. And can you believe that? And she was like, you are. I was like, me? Madison Lee? And she was like, you are controlling, but you have to be. Like, you've always been this way. And then I started thinking about it, and I was like, I am controlling because my entire life revolves around controlling the uncontrollables. Like, my entire life revolves around trying to make a number on this meter say something, no matter if I'm excited or I'm happy or I'm stressed out or I'm working out or I'm going to work or, oh my God, I woke up today and my blood sugar's like, let's go up, like, let's get up there. And I'm just like, please stop. So like my entire life revolves around controlling things that are incredibly difficult to control. And as I said, it's the only life I've known. Been like this since I was 5. No, I was 3. I started taking care of myself when I was 5. And my friend, it was actually really helpful. And I started therapy right after this conversation a few years ago. But I have had the responsibility of deciding whether I want to wake up the next day ever since I was 5 years old. And that's not fair. My mom was there to support for a lot of those years, but I got my pump right around then, 5 or 6, I got my pump. And I could press the buttons if I wanted to. And so, I had that support. But the first real test and the first real lesson came in when I left to go to school. I don't know how young everybody's kids are, but that was the beginning, I think, of my mom preparing me to be where I am today and to do all the things. That was the beginning of the first set of fights I would have every single day of my life. So going to school, as you all know, is really scary because your child's out of your care for most of the day. Now, you can monitor them. Back then, that was not a thing. You could not see my blood sugar all day long. You had to rely on teaching and training this nurse and knowing that you taught your kid enough to tell the nurse the right thing to do, even though they wanted to be the experts. But it was also the beginning of having to, if I say it plainly, like get in trouble to stay alive. It was the beginning of, I need to leave the classroom or I need to go to the bathroom. Nope, you have to wait. I'm gonna go to the bathroom. And, the back and forth, the exchanges, it was difficult, you can't do that I'm gonna do it anyway. And so I think it's a really, really tough thing. And as I talk to more and more young people now, I'm starting to see how they're not like me. I like attention. And I never minded having attention. But a lot of kids today, I talk to them and they're like, we don't want to stand out. We don't want to be different. We want to be like everyone else. And so having your pump out or flashing this or telling them I'm diabetic is not something that a lot of young people feel empowered to do today or want to do today. And so I've had to kind of adjust the advice that I give them. And so I would say if you're talking to some of your young people and they're not very open about their condition, they need to learn how to have respectful conversations with people in power to say, oh, Miss Smith, can I talk to you over here? Do you remember that I need this and I'm not going to the bathroom to get out of class? I'm going to the bathroom because my blood sugar is high, or can I go to the nurse's office? Now, did my blood sugar get a little bit high during PE and I need to go to the nurse a little more? Maybe. Like perhaps when the mile run came up, I was a little more diabetic than I was at other times. But still, I rarely took advantage of it, because the way I was raised was that, yes, I have a little bit of a harder life, but I was never allowed to make diabetes an excuse. I would get my behind beat just like every other kid. I was in the mall. This is the best story. I'm in the mall one day with my mom, and I'm just like having a fit. And she turned to me and snapped at me in the middle of the mall and was like, "You better hope you're high when we get home." I'm like, if you were another mom hearing that, no context, I wasn't high and I got beat. So that was difficult. And then I guess, so I did that all throughout my school years. I learned to advocate for myself.
Right back to the interview, but first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Edgepark. As you're managing life with diabetes, Edgepark is here to support you on your health journey. Discover convenience and peace of mind with Edgepark, your trusted supplier in diabetes management supplies. Edgepark has a wide variety of pump and CGM solutions from top brands to fit your unique needs. Plus, Edgepark works with most insurance companies and handles the paperwork to navigate insurance complexities for you and make the ordering process as seamless as possible. You work hard to manage your diabetes. Let Edgepark take care of the rest. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Edgepark logo.
I told you guys I'm a journalist, and a mom has been in contact with me at one of the schools after seeing some of my posts because her child is having a really difficult time. Almost fell down the stairs one day because the school's not following the 501 plan. And she, had an accident because they wouldn't let her child go to the bathroom. And she's doing all these things. And she was on the phone with me. And she was getting really emotional and she was getting really upset. And she's like, "I'm so sorry, I'm crying." And I just had to have a really real moment with her. And I was like, "It's okay. I need you to cry on the phone with me right now, because when your daughter gets home, this needs to stop." I was like, you can't do this in front of her. She's having a really hard time. And I was like, and I called my mom after, I was like, "I almost feel bad." And she's like, "No, this is what she needed to hear, because I know you all keep it together for us a lot. And I just want to acknowledge how hard that is and how you absolutely need to have people that you can fall apart with." Because when I came to my mom, it was my turn to fall apart. Like, I needed a place where I could fall apart. And if she wasn't there, and like, I acknowledge this is, again, not fair. This whole talk is about how unfair this is. I just want you to know this, okay? Like, I'm being very practical. None of it is fair. So I told this mom on the phone, I said, "Please cry right now, and then you need to pull it together at 2:00 when she gets off the bus." And so she did. And we had that conversation, and we had a couple more, tough conversations, because she was going back and forth and fighting. And I said, "You can't fight this fight for her. When she leaves, you need to have prepared her to have this fight at school. And that's not fair. She's 12. But if she can't do this, she's not going to come home to you one day." And I think that made her realize, like, oh, I need to be preparing her in a way that I'm not. And that sucked. Like, I'm going to tell you how much it sucked growing up and having to do that every single day. But I wouldn't be able to be doing the things that I'm doing right now if my mom hadn't prepared me to leave. So when I did leave, like I said, thinking back to when I left home, I don't know how my mom let me leave. For a lot of reasons. I was 17. I had skipped a grade. Why did she let me? Don't do that. This is nothing diabetes related. Do not let your kids skip a grade. Like, I have social problems because I just trying to fit in, but when I get bored, I get in trouble and I needed more of a challenge. So I'm 17, just turned 17, leave to go to college. My sister had died about a year before I left home for school. So she was a type 1 diabetic. And I don't know how my mom let me leave because I went to New York. I was not an 8-hour drive away. I was not close. But she let me leave, and when I asked her about it before I came to give this talk, she said, I did everything I could to prepare you. Like, there was nothing else. And she felt so confident, and like, this is one of her tips to you all. Like, you need to be so confident that you have given your child every single tool they could use to manage their care if they choose to. And like, that's the part that you don't get a say in. If they choose to do this, you have given them every tool that they need. So she's like, there was nothing I could do. Nothing else I could do from being there. Like, you know how to go to the store. You know how to buy your fruit snacks. You know which fruit snacks you like the most. You have juice. You know how to use a glucometer. You know how to use a monitoring system. What can I do by being there? So I left to go to college, and I told you at 5, I started just making the decision about whether I wanted to wake up the next day. But I don't think that was really, really true until I left for college, because there was nobody to check to make sure I was up. So I went to college, and let me go back a little bit. In high school, after my sister died, I decided I didn't want to be diabetic anymore. We did everything. She did everything right. Something happened, and I was like, what is the point? What is the point? I have never, ever, and I tell people this a lot, I've never wanted to die, but there have been a lot of times in my life where I've looked in the mirror and been like, but I don't want to work this hard to stay alive. So it was one of those moments for me where I was like, this is hard. And there's a lot of other hard things happening right now. And so I'll never forget, it was a few months after she had passed, and I had said, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm laying on my bathroom floor. I'm in my room. I'm laying on my bathroom floor. I have too much makeup on to be crying, so let's not do that. And my mom came in, and I told her, I don't want to be diabetic anymore. And so I had we got a pillow, and she got a blanket, and she laid down with me on the bathroom floor. And she was like, then I'll do it for you. Can I have a tissue? Anybody got a tissue? Anybody? Mom, I need a mom. Does anybody have a tissue? Oh, thank you. Woo, Lord. Yeah, okay. Oh, Lord, don't lose an eyelash. Okay. So my mom said, then I'll do it for you. And so for the next 3 months, she did it for me. My mother was a living pancreas for me. She tested my blood. She took my pump off. She gave me my injection every night. She tested my blood sugar 1,000,000 times a day. She woke up in the middle. I'm 16, 17 years old. She woke up in the middle of the night and tested my blood sugar until I decided that I could be diabetic again. And so, in a room full of moms, I'm telling you this because I hear like you're not a type 1 diabetic, but in an emergency, you can be. It was an emergency. So, woo. Thank you. Yeah, we'll do that. Okay. Y'all didn't have mimosas or anything this morning? That was last night. Okay, here we go. So another thing from that, I'm telling you, when I told you how sometimes I said I don't want to live, I don't want to die, but I don't want to work this hard to live. And I think when you see your kid exhibiting some behaviors that might signal that to you, I think it's important to have that conversation with them. Make sure it's okay that they say that, right? Okay, it's scary to hear. Make sure it's okay that they say that, and get on the bathroom floor with them and find something that can ground them, right? For me, it was, I don't want you to leave me. And I said, okay, you're right. I don't really want to leave you. My youngest sister, I'm obsessed with. My brother, I was like, I don't want to leave my mom. So have the conversation. Don't freak out. in front of her or him. But work together to find something that's grounding, right? That you can come back to when you're having those feelings, because when you send the kid off, they're going to need to remember why they can work a little harder today. So that's step 2 of preparing your kids to go out into the world. Step 3, I promise you, and I'm supposed to be giving some encouragement here, there is nothing you can do to prepare your child for when they're off your insurance. Like, I mean nothing. And I'm telling you this, if you look at my life, like, it looks so impressive on a resume. Like, oh, she graduated college at 19 and she got her first job and she was the youngest person ever elected at 22 and she got her next job and she was leading a national team at 25 and doing all. The only reason I had to do all those things was because I was working backward from 26. So from the time I was 10 years old, I had to start working backwards. And I was like, if I want to be a journalist, I'm going to be so broke. I made $24,000 at my first job. That's a different kind of broke. Like, I had 5 roommates. I worked 2 jobs. And I still went to sleep for dinner. So it was like, I had to work backwards. And I said, okay, this job was great. I have to get to the next job. I have to bump up salaries, boom, boom, boom. And still, I hit my salary goal by the time I was 25. But the insurance, this is when I was in Atlanta. So the insurance was not good. And it didn't matter how much money I was making. It didn't matter I was making 6 figures, because one, like, that means nothing right now. Life is hard. The economy is really bad. You can't buy any houses. You can't do all these things. I was spending all my money on trying to get my insulin pump, or trying to get insulin for the pump, all these things. And then I kept going back to, like, I'm 25 in Atlanta. I do not want to spend my money on being alive. Like, that pissed me off. So I spent my money on mimosas and did the bare minimum over here. And so I had to leave that job. Adulting, so obviously, taking care of yourself is a full-time job. And then having a full-time job, what a nightmare. I literally, and I talk to other friends who are diabetic and they feel the exact same way. I can't tell you how many of my bosses I've cussed out, and it's like just not an okay excuse to say, oh, I was really, really high. It just doesn't work like that. But if I can give you practical, actual advice, it would be, yes, you need to start having that conversation as we're thinking about colleges, as we're thinking about majors, as we're thinking about jobs. As you think about your salary, you also need to consider, nobody had the conversation with me about the benefits package. It was always just money. I had to make some adjustments and look more for benefits. That means more to me than salary because of my condition. Again, not fair, but I don't want to spend $1,400 a month on this. And so I think that was another really, really tough point for me. And then last thing before I tried to get through reading what my parents wanted you to know. I was working on a story here right before the walk, and I went and talked to a family who had Tzield. Do we know about Tzield? Tzield is a drug that was recently approved that can delay the onset of type 1 diabetes. Did you see it? I love that. Thank you. I need more viewers. Feel free to watch. So Tzield is a new drug that can delay the onset of type 1 diabetes. So now, so for example, in my family, once I was diagnosed, they could have gotten all my siblings tested to see, do you have this marker? So there was a young girl, I won't say her name unless you saw my segment, which feel free to watch. And she was diagnosed later in life. She's in high school. And then they found out her brother had the marker. And so her parents, who are incredible human beings, fantastic, they were like, we're going to do everything we can. We saw how much this impacted our little girl's life. We're going to do everything we can, for our son. And they did. He was the first person in the state in the state to get this. He actually went to a different state to get it. Was there 14 days, got the treatment. They said, boom, it worked. And now this kid knows he has more time. And like, that's incredible. Like, as a parent, can you imagine how amazing it would be to give your kid more time to be a kid? I've never been a kid. I don't remember being a kid. So the parents are just so excited. They're so thrilled. They see how hard it is for their daughter. And so I'm there and I'm interviewing them. And then I interview the siblings together, and this older brother, and he's talking about, what it's like to see what his sister has to go through every day and how grateful he is to have a little bit more time. He knows it's coming. And I said, how does that feel to know that it's coming? Me, it just hit me like a truck. Everyone else, just boom. And now you have to adjust. But to know, he's talking about that. And I turned to the daughter and I asked the same thing. I said, how does it feel to know that your brother has a little bit more time? And she broke down. And she just broke down in tears. And I wasn't expecting it, and I didn't know what was going on. And she asked if we could finish the interview. And I said, no problem. She went upstairs, and I asked her mom later if I could go upstairs and talk with her. So I went up to her room, and I pulled up a chair, and I was like, did I upset you? What happened? I didn't mean to do that. Like, what's going on? And she starts crying again, and she's like, it's not fair that I have to live with this. And as you know, your kids with type 1 get a lot of attention. And if they have siblings, sometimes there's a little bit of guilt there that the siblings don't get as much attention. And my mom has talked a lot about that. But she was like, it's hard for me. And I was getting a lot of attention from my parents, and that was helping. But then my brother is now getting all the attention because he doesn't have to live like this. And I was like, oh man, here I am with the camera pointing out the fact that he doesn't have to live like this. And in that moment, it just made me realize, like, I can understand how you may feel guilt. Love all your kids equally, give them all the same attention. But I don't want you to feel guilty about making sure that your kids with type 1 feel acknowledged and feel heard and know that you are there for them, and you are at least trying to tell them that you understand every day how hard this is, even if it's hard for you. So with that, I wanted to share a few things. I asked my parents, I was like, I don't have kids because they're expensive, and I don't know why you guys did this, but I asked my parents, I was like, I'm going to talk to a room full of moms. What should I say? And I'm going to start with my dad, who had to take care of my mom, right? My mom was taking care of me, but he was the one that really got to see in those moments that I didn't, what kind of impact that had on her. And he said that he wants to make sure you all are taking care of yourselves, are taking the moments, like even if it's just when they're away at school, treat yourself, do something, spend time with friends, have times where, like, I'll have times where I can forget that I'm a type 1 diabetic. You can forget that you are a type 1 mom. Like, just go and do something for a minute because you need those moments. And find someone to share the burden with was the next thing he said. And the last thing he said was my favorite. He said, you better make the dads work. Partners, wives, whatever, make them do work. And I was kind of glad that he acknowledged my mom was the primary one there. My dad played football professionally, so he was gone a lot. For 9 months out of the year, he was gone a lot. But I'm glad that he was the one that acknowledged, like, make the partners step up. You know you want to be there because you know what to do, but if there is another parent there, then utilize that. And then here's what my mom said.
Right back to our conversation. But first, Diabetes Connections is sponsored by Gvoke HypoPen. Now that Benny is on his own more and more, I'm grateful that he's open about his diabetes journey and always tells his friends how to use his emergency glucagon, Gvoke HypoPen. Gvoke HypoPen is a ready-to-use rescue pen for treating very low blood sugar in people with diabetes ages 2 and above. If you take insulin or sulfonylureas, you are at risk for your blood sugar going too low. Low blood sugar emergencies can happen unexpectedly, and they demand quick action. You need a safety net when it matters most. Be ready to treat a very low blood sugar with Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more, go to GvokeGlucagon.com/Stacy. That's GvokeGlucagon.com/STACEY. Gvoke should not be used if you have a tumor in the gland on top of your kidneys called pheochromocytoma, or if you have a tumor in your pancreas called insulinoma. Visit GvokeGlucagon.com/risk for safety information.
She has a couple tips. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to read this. I typically don't like to read, but I want to make sure I get her words right. The first thing she said is, you know how hard it is for your kids to live this life. So don't feel bad about feeling how hard it is to be a mom caring for a child with diabetes. Moms always rightfully put aside their own frustrations and their tiredness because you believe it's so much harder to be a diabetic. We know this, but she also wants you to give yourself some grace because you're struggling too, and that's okay. The next thing she said is that, like my dad, it's important to take care of yourselves, pamper yourselves when and if you have the opportunity, because she said it will make you a better caregiver. If your kids are young, you want to vet any parents that they have sleepovers with. Make sure that they're going to care for your child properly so you can trust if they're away from you. Train any parent who is willing to learn. Teach any friends who are willing to learn. When she sent me this, I was like, ugh. Okay. The last two. Your kids can be as capable as you teach them to be, but sometimes you can take the burden from them, and you can be diabetic for them for a week or two. It's hard, but it also makes your heart so full to be able to do that every once in a while and know that you're giving your baby as much of a break as they will ever be able to get. I got one more. And I think that was talking about that story I told you earlier. And she's right. That is as much of a break as I have ever been able to get in my whole entire life. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for those moments where she was diabetic for me. And the last thing she has to say is that it's scary. It is very, very scary to let your kids out of your care as they go to kindergarten, as they go to sleepovers, as they go to college, and just acknowledging that is sometimes all you need. You need to allow yourself to be scared. It's okay for you to be scared, and you're not alone in your fears. She says to tell you that your mom is still scared on days she can't reach you. But she has to let you live your dream. And my parents have. They have let me go, and they've let me fail, and they've let me live my dreams. But my mom is still scared sometimes. And that's never going to go away. But I'll end with this. I could never be a T1D mom. I couldn't be scared all the time. And if there is one piece of comfort I can offer you all, it's that your kids are never going to be scared. I'm not scared of anything. And I mean that. I am not scared of anything. I'm not scared to live. I'm not scared to fail. I'm not scared of things that can hurt me. I'm not scared of death. I'm not scared. And no, my mom lives with being scared every single day, but I want you all to take some sort of solace in the fact that you are raising fearless children. and all my friends will say the exact same thing. I am never scared. There's really no alcohol in here.
Here in our swag bags, we're going to put mascara. Thank
Honestly,
you so much.
Oh my goodness.
That was so wonderful. We can't thank you enough. We do have time for questions. I definitely have a couple, but okay, I'm coming to the back of the room. Oh my goodness. I'll hold it.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. I have a 12-year-old daughter that was diagnosed a year and a half ago. And walking out of here last night, what I thought is maybe I'm doing way too much because I think that I try to be her pancreas too often in thinking that maybe she can forget that she's diabetic. But back to the backpack analogy last night, that backpack is on them and they don't forget. I can always walk away and not be diabetic for a minute, but she never has the ability to. And so sometimes I think that I struggle with being her pancreas for her so that she can forget, but at the same time, I don't think that she ever does forget. And in choosing that, I'm not teaching her how to do it correctly. Also, at the same time, they say that a diabetic makes 180 decisions a day that a non-diabetic doesn't have to. When that 180 decisions becomes 180 conversations with me as to how she's treating herself at school or like at her friends and all of these, I'm not giving her the ability to make those decisions for herself. And then I hear you speak and your mom has helped be your pancreas here or there. I'm really struggling with understanding when I should train her to do it on her own because she was invited on a sleepover next week for a birthday party and my automatic response was she'll stay till 11 and then I'll pick her up. Like I can't let her go on a sleepover alone. She doesn't know what she's doing. I don't know where to be her pancreas and where to support her so that she can carry that backpack on her own.
It's a great question. And it's a tough age.
I think that is a great question. I think you need to support her when she asks for it. And when she doesn't, you need to do yourself a favor by teaching her what she needs to do because she's 12. In 6 years, she's going to be having permanent sleepovers away from you. So you only have 6 years to teach her how to have a sleepover. And you don't want to steal these experiences away from her because that can lead to a lot of resentment, right? Okay, because then you want to tell your kids that you can do everything except for be a pilot.
Oh, you can be a pilot now. You can
be a pilot now?
Yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah, you can't be. The only thing that's left is astronaut.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I've got a pilot on my show.
Oh my goodness.
And I'll connect you guys.
Send me the link.
Yeah.
Now I have to adjust all my stuff.
Just astronaut. And that's coming. Military, but that's coming too.
My parents did tell me that. Like, you can do, it's just a little bit harder, was what they always said, right? So you don't want to not be able to say that to her, right? Like, yeah, you can go on sleepovers, but to give yourself peace of mind, you need to feel comfortable that she's going to do everything she needs to do on that sleepover, right? So going back to the original question, the answer is you're her pancreas when she asks, and she'll ask if she needs that. And if she doesn't, you need to learn to be more hands-off.
Any other question? Yeah.
My son is a diabetic, and my daughter, we caught her in stage 2, so we just finished Tzield for her, the 14-day infusion in Richmond. It's been wonderful, but I'm so glad you mentioned that. I never asked my son, how do you feel about that? Because I think, I'm sure he has some feelings that now his sister gets to maybe not have it for the next couple of years. We'll see, So I just want to make a comment that I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I will go home and
I think
have a good conversation.
That's all it is. I think it's just having the conversation and acknowledging that whatever you're feeling is okay, even if it doesn't sound good. I remember I told the young woman I was speaking to, because she was like, this doesn't sound good, right? She's like, I don't want to say this. I don't want, because it's not going to make me sound good. And I was like, I say things all the time that don't sound good. And I told her, my sister had passed. And I was like, I remember after she passed, I was like, I'm so jealous. And like, that sounds terrible. But I was like, I'm so jealous that she doesn't have to do this every single day. I miss her terribly. That doesn't sound good. And being able to say that and be like, that's how you feel, that's all I needed in that moment. Like, okay.
I'll hold it.
So tagging on to what Madison has just said is that when you want to be your child's pancreas, wait till they ask. So let me share a brief story with you. I've been a diabetes educator for 42 years. For a period of about 6 years, I was doing talks all over the nation, teaching other nurses, dietitians, pharmacists how to be diabetes educators from the perspective of a person living with type 1. And when you're doing that as a profession for 8 hours, doing a lecture in 5 different cities all over the United States, and then flying home on the red eye and taking care of your own type 1 diabetes, I would get off the plane and take the pump out of my pocket and hand it to my husband and say, I'm done. And he knew what that meant because we had talked about it. I was burned out and done. He would take the pump, put it on his belt, and we would, of course, be 42 centimeters close together, which is a pretty cool thing for the husband. But for the weekend after I came in, he would count the carbs, he would do the bolus, he would punch the buttons, he would apply the Dexcom if it was time, and I didn't have to think about it. Now, the backpack was still on me. I knew I still had diabetes, but he gave me that break. And I think Madison's key is wait for your child to ask for it and then say, how can I help you with this burden? How can I help you with that backpack? And then go from there.
And I just want to jump into the perspective when, my son was 2. You do have to kind of insert those conversations because they may not know to ask. And so, we pushed independence early, and he would go to this camp. The first year he went, he was 8, non-diabetes camp. So for 2 weeks, he did everything. And I was really concerned about burnout. So when he came home, I said, how about a diabetes-free day? And he's like, and that's exactly what we did. I did everything for him. And every time he came home from that camp, he knew he would get a diabetes-free day. And I'm like, you can always have another one. But he never asked. I always thought that was weird. He never asked for more.
But
right?
But
I waited, like if he didn't ask.
Yeah, and listen, I was 24 the next time I asked for one after I was 16. And I said, can you move to Atlanta?
And she came.
And she did.
All right, question?
I'm always really fortunate because I'm always the only dad in the room at these events. So you were well aware at a very young age. How aware you were of the dynamic between your mom and dad as your diabetes progressed? And you talk so much more about your mom, and I get it, totally understand it. But what was that dynamic like, and what did you appreciate of it, and what didn't you appreciate?
That's a great question, honestly. And I didn't think about it a lot until I talked with my dad to prepare for coming here this week. I always went to my mom just because I think in my household, like my mom didn't work. She was always there. She was very hands-on. If I needed to come home from school, it was my mom that I called, not my dad. My dad, to me, I felt like knew all the basics. He knew how to use all the things. Counting carbs, I honest to God, don't think he knows how to do it. Like, I really don't think he does. He knows that there's a need for it, but I can look at every single thing on that table and tell you exactly how many carbs are in it, and my mom probably could too, but I didn't know if my dad could. He could figure it out. But when you talk about the dynamic between my mom and my dad, I guess if I go back and I reflect on it, I feel like my mom was in charge of taking care of the diabetes care, and my dad was, oh my God, bless you. God bless you. Thank you so much. It's like 5:00, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I felt like my dad, he was and is the provider. This is actually a great question. It made me remember something I forgot. I didn't know this for a long time. My dad stayed in a job that he hated for about 12 years. And because the insurance was so freaking good. Mm-hmm. Like, they literally got to the point where they told him, like, don't even come into the office anymore. Like, we don't want to see you. Like, all these things. They treated him so poorly. But he kept that job until I left the house. Wow. So when you talk about the dynamics, it very much was like provider, caretaker. And obviously, as I get older, I understand that they work in tandem. But after seeing what insurance really is, I was like, oh, my dad made a lot of sacrifices for our care.
Yeah. I think we're going to do one more question, then I have a quick wrap-up question for you.
So since you've done a lot of things like, college, different jobs, how has it been being a type 1, being in the workforce? Like, what positives do you see and negatives do you see? Because sometimes I hear, oh, my employer makes me do this, or they don't respect that I have diabetes, and they kind of make you guys do things that's not necessarily legal or comfortable.
Great question.
That is a great question. Again, because I was raised just not thinking that this was normal, I don't see it until later. I don't understand that, and it took something. I can give you an example of something that just recently happened. I work in a newsroom. It's a very hectic, difficult environment, and until I started looking at the trends, it's like my blood sugar goes up at 10 a.m. and it stays here until 6 p.m. when I leave work. Because it's stressful. And I was like, what is happening every day between 10 and 6? It's not too late to marry rich, I've decided. But I just noticed my blood sugar, was going up. And so I said, okay, I can fix this. And I said, I'll work in the building, but I'll work in a different space. That way I can control my environment a little bit more. And my boss came in and he reamed me out. You don't get an office. Nobody here has an office, blah, blah, blah. And made a comment to me, something about disability. And I lost it. I heard there's some people who watch the show every day. There was a day, it happened right before my noon show. I'm anchoring, and I cried the entire show because I was like, not once since I started working have I ever been made to feel like I have a disability. And it deeply hurt me. He was like, go to HR and file if you need to do that kind of stuff. And it just really upset me. But then I was like, okay, maybe I'm upset about it. That wasn't very nice, but I should go to HR and file and make sure that hey, if my blood sugar's high, I have the accommodation to be able to stay in the building, but just step out of that particular room, work over here. There've been a lot of, again, it's a high pressure environment. Times where I'm just I'm super, super irritable. And I'm like, why is everything mad? I want to fight. There's my boss. I'm going to go fight. So there have been so many times where and you don't realize it because this is all you know. I'm diabetic all the time. I'm irritable no, I'm not. I'm irritable. My blood sugar's high, but you don't put it together until later. So being in the workforce, it's difficult. It truly, truly is. So I would just say file for accommodations just in case you need them, just in case you need to use them, and try to figure out ways that you can manage difficult environments.
Yeah. And then I'll kind of wrap it up. I'm just curious. This isn't about moms, so I'm sorry, but I was in TV for a while. I was a reporter and an anchor, and I cannot imagine you've been so open. You're on Instagram, you've showed pictures, you wear your Dexcom and you have a sleeveless shirt. What made you decide to do that, and what has the response been?
I never have hidden the fact that I'm diabetic, but and there's a post if you look at my Instagram where I just had slapped my Dexcom on my arm. I never even wear it there. I wear it just in different places because it's easy. But then I had a dress and it was sleeveless, and I was like, oh no, this is going to be a distraction. So just some context from working in TV, everything is a distraction. Your shoulders are out, men are gonna get turned on by my shoulder? What do you mean? Your hair, I can't change my hairstyle often. You have to be very consistent. You have to look the same to make sure that when you're delivering the news, people are just focusing on the news. And so I was like, this is gonna be a distraction. But then I was like, I've been talking a lot about, once I joined the JDR board locally, I've been talking a lot about diabetes, I've been doing stories. Enough people, I think, know that I'm just going to go on air. And it was actually my co-anchor. And he said, who cares? He's like, this is your life. And I was like, you're right. And the response was so overwhelming. The ones that got me were moms messaging me saying, my daughter walked by, or I went to go get my daughter, and I showed her you on the TV, and it helped her see that you don't have to hide this. Or now she wants to wear hers on her arm. And it made me want to do it more. It made me want to live out loud a little bit more. And so I have started doing that.
That's awesome. Well, we cannot thank you enough for sharing your story, for bringing your mom and dad into the room as well. How cool was that? Thank you so much, Madison. I hope you'll stay for photos and everything else if you can. And enjoy.
Cheers.
Thank you. Yes. All right. I cannot thank you all enough. I don't have any big words to wrap it up. I'm still crying my mascara off from what you had to say. Thank you so much. But I will say, as Leah knows, my daughter, Benny's sister, the sibling. Yay, Leah! Yay! I spent Thursday, as I do before all of these events, going, no one's going to come. I don't care if they've paid. They're probably going to change their minds. This is a terrible idea. Why did I do this? And I always know, too, that on Saturday, I'm going to just be so full. We all need this. 17 years in, I need this just as much as everybody here. So thank you so much. We should have done the picture first because we're all crying now. But we are going to go outside and do a group picture, and then stick around if you have nice things to say. If you have nothing nice to say, bye. See you later.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacy Sims.
Definitely putting tissues in the swag bags at these events going forward. I mean, we cry, we laugh, we cry again, we laugh again. It can be very emotional. But man, I'm so glad Madison agreed to be our closing keynote. She was unbelievable. And I know that JDRF and other organizations have asked her to speak at their events, a lot of virtual events. If you see her anywhere, go ahead and definitely sign up to listen to her. And please sign up for Mom's Night Out alerts. You can do that over diabetes-connections.com. Click on the events tab, click on the Mom's Night Out tab. They are one and the same. Sometimes they just show up differently on mobile. And we will be opening registration for our fall events, I think just in a couple of days as you listen here. Cannot wait. All right, thanks to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Stacy Sims. I'll see you back here soon. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacy Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.
You know I'm a big fan of choice when it comes to diabetes technology. I get so excited when there's something new. If you live with diabetes, you deserve to find the best fit for you. That's just one reason I'm working with Omnipod to help spread the word about what makes it so easy to test their system out. If you want to try an insulin pump or see what life without tubes is all about, you can try Omnipod even if your current tubed pump is in warranty. Really, you heard that right. And if it's not right for you, no problem. Omnipod does not tie you down with a contract or a tube. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Omnipod logo. Terms and conditions apply. For full safety risk information and free trial terms and conditions, visit omnipod.com/diabetesconnections.